Hey everyone, this is part two of my analysis of We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks. The first video went for about 15 minutes, and that's the cutoff on the program that I'm using. And I know you're probably already thinking, wow, that such a short poem had 15 minutes worth of analysis. Well, add however long this takes to those 15 minutes. Hopefully, this one won't be nearly as long. So, we left off talking about the tone and the feeling of tension that the poem was building, and the fact that Jazz June almost lets up a little bit, and June is a transition month from spring to summer, which is symbolic of where these people are in their lives. So I've pretty much broken down the poem line by line, and I've left the most interesting lines for the last part, and that is the two at the top, the pool players, 7 at the golden shovel. And she capitalized both of these lines, and that's done, as most people say. I'm sure you guys are used to looking at rhetoric from last year, but it's done for emphasis. And now in English 4, we have to get used to, we have to ask what, it's not just about emphasis. What is she emphasizing? Why is she drawing our attention to this? And the pool players, it lets us know that they play pool. And there's 7 of them at the golden shovel. We talked about how there are 7 we's at the end of each line. We have 7 young men, and of course the golden shovel is important as well. But the first thing I want to talk about is, of course, the number, and this is something that you can apply to all sorts of literature and poetry, and that is the presence and importance of numbers that have been reoccurring throughout much of Western history. And those are the numbers 3, 7, and 12. First off, the number 3, I'm sure whether you are Christian or not, you've heard the term the Holy Trinity. I believe there were 3 days before Christ rose from the grave, according to the New Testament. You had 3 wise men. You had, trying to think, I already said the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You had, if you want to go into Greek mythology, you had 3 original nature gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, being sky, the oceans, and death. They were the original 3. So, I mean, anything you can really think of, the number 3 appearing, it's pretty significant when it comes to Western culture. The 3 wise men, that's another one. Consider all day coming up with how 3 is significant. 3 little pigs. You can look at folklore. You can look at the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament. You can look at other myths, other religions. But you usually want to stick to those that are relevant to Western culture, because as people who live in the West, we'd be familiar with them. Next up, I said, is the number 7. 7 is considered in the Judeo-Christian tradition to be the number of divinity, divine number. In terms of like secularly, the 7 days a week, 7 is an important number there. And I'm drawing a blank on any others, but I'm sure there are plenty. Then you get to the number 12, and the number 12 is symbolic of a cycle. You have 12 months in a year. You have 12 hours in a clock. And just like a clock, a year, the years keep spinning. You reach the end of December, you start back over at January. So 12 is often indicative of a cycle. You had 12 disciples. You have 12 people on a jury. You had 12 original Olympians. So 12 is also pretty powerful in Western culture. But to go back to what we were saying earlier, the number 3, you have that in this poem. You have 3 words per line, with the exception of the first and the last. And then even then, the first and the last, 4 and 2 come out to 6. 6 divided by 2 comes out to 3. So 3 syllables per line, 3 words per line. And, you can draw inferences with that. Again, I think they're just short to give it a sense of quickness. And to come back to the number 7, being the number of divinity, this sort of holy number, you could argue that she chose the number 7 because if it's the symbol of the divine, the symbol of God, these young people will be meeting God pretty soon. You could say that maybe they feel godlike and invincible in their youth. They're young. When you're young, you feel invincible, and so that's why she chose the number 7. Um, Seven's a lucky number. That's another thing. It's commonly considered lucky, and so 7, maybe they feel lucky. So there's all sorts of stuff going on with that you could different paths you could take with that number. So dropping numerology off, we're going to look at symbolism, which if you're doing the twist analysis, this would fall into word choice as well as imagery. That she chose the Golden Shovel. Why is she calling this pool hall, this club, the Golden Shovel? Well, I mean, there's a lot of inferences you can make about that, but one of them that most certainly is not. A lot of people think that, well, there was just a club down the street when Gwendolyn Brooks wrote this poem called The Golden Shovel. Maybe that's it. No, go for a deeper meaning. Shovel is used to dig. It's a tool, and it's used to digs graves, and so the fact that it's gold means that it is attractive. They are looking at this place where they're going, this time in their lives, the Golden Shovel, maybe the club that they're meeting at, but metaphorically, it's kind of where they're at and what they're doing. They're digging their own graves by living this life. But the fact that the shovel is golden, you could say that golden is synonymous with youth. When you're young, you're gold. When you're young, you're golden. Stay golden, pony boy, if you want to go there into the outsiders. But the fact that they're digging their own graves and they seem to be attracted to it in the way that gold would attract someone, I think is the best interpretation of that. So to go back to this being capitalized, to draw emphasis, to draw our attention to it, there's another thing that happens where you'll see capitalization like this, and that is in theater, in a script. Whenever a scene is set, it's put in all caps, and those all caps usually aren't read. The all caps just tells the reader what's going on. And so, this, in a strange way, this is a poem, but with the lines being capitalized like that, it feels like it's stage direction. It feels like that a scene is being set. And you could almost see a stage and curtains moving, and these 7 young people in a fake pool hall chanting, "We real cool, we left school," and doing it in unison, in the way that a tragic chorus does. I don't know how much you know about Greek tragedy. I'll try to make sure that we study at least one Greek tragic play, or at least you'll be familiar with how they're set up. But in a Greek tragedy, this art that is 2,400 years old, you always had a chorus. You had a group of people who would sing along and kind of explain what was going on. And a chorus is always associated with tragedy. I don't believe Greek comedies had a chorus. If they did, forgive me for being wrong, but I'm pretty sure they did not. And so you have a tragic, from the get-go, if you know your literature, she's opening with setting the scene of a tragedy. And we know that it's a tragedy. They die soon. So this is a poem, but in a weird way, it's also a play, because it is making an allusion to the structure of Greek drama. And I'll have to do my research and see. I don't think there were just 7 members of a chorus. I think a chorus had 12. Again, there's that magic number, but I'll double check. But again, I think that these young men are players in a tragedy. Again, the pool players. Player has a double meaning. They are not just people who play pool. They are players upon a stage. So hopefully this helps you see the poem a little bit differently. Hopefully this shows you the depth that you need to go to connect some of these dots. And the dots, if the dots are too far or too difficult to connect, then there's probably nothing there. That's a good rule of thumb. You shouldn't have to dig too hard to make sense of it. But also, too, a lot of the references I'm making and a lot of the knowledge comes from me having, taught English for a decade. And before that, having been familiar with literature and loving to read and things like that. So what I'm saying isn't the standard that you have to, hold yourself to in terms of knowledge, but it is the depth that you need to go. And you don't need the knowledge of numerology or the knowledge of myths or Greek tragedy to still be able to analyze this poem. You can still talk about the rhythm, the shortness, the speed, the connection between like the golden shovel and them digging their own graves, things like that. So I will close it out. I didn't quite make it to 15 minutes. I made it to 10, and hopefully this helps. So message me if you have any questions.